Jalin Hyatt got into a war of words with coaches and upper management, kind of got himself in the doghouse last year. We were wondering why he didn't play because you traded up for this kid. He's got all this potential. Why isn't he playing? Is this something we need to look at this offseason? Will that linger into this year, or do you think he can get out of the doghouse? How does he get out of the doghouse?
Play better, right? Like score touchdowns like he did today, get open, run better routes. That was specifically mentioned in what Connor Hughes wrote. He mentioned that if he shows up this offseason and he's running better routes and he seems more invested in the playbook, then he'll get himself out of the doghouse. I mean, he's definitely still in it though. I know he caught a touchdown pass today and he got some targets, but he also did take practice reps at gunner on special teams. So clearly Hyatt is still in some sort of a doghouse and not viewed as a potential starter by the New York Giants coaching staff currently. And I think my biggest takeaway from that excerpt of that article, I remember last season when Brian Burns was talking to the media after some of those tough losses that the Giants had. And mind you, this is a Brian Burns who was on the injury report for like 8 games last season with 3 different injuries and still didn't miss a game. And I remember him speaking to the media saying, guys in this locker room need to grow up and they need to learn how to play through adversity and not give up on their team. And then here we are, start of OTAs, and now Connor Hughes decides to drop this article and mention, hey, by the way, last year, Jalin Hyatt fought with the coaching staff, fought with the front office, and then mentally checked out last season. And I think you can start to piece together there were players who were being referred to in those sentences from Brian Burns about growing up and checking out. So I think it's very obvious that there were players who really checked out last season. And then I think you can open a can of worms from that. How do you trust the Jalin Hyatt if he is still in the doghouse? Does he have the mentality and the competitiveness necessary to get out of the doghouse and to not check out this season if the going gets tough, right? Because we're saying, we think that Russell Wilson can help him develop a lot. Maybe he'll get some targets and make some plays this season. Well, not if he's mentally not in it, because Russell Wilson, more so than anybody, is going to recognize who's sharp and who's not. And the guys who are sharp are going to get the ball. And then on top of that, I think you could also open the can of worms and ask about the impact of the quarterback position last year and those guys who were in the room and the impact that they had on the wide receivers. Obviously, Neighbors had opportunities last year where he could have thrown the quarterbacks under the bus, but didn't. And then I also think you have to question the coach. If there were players who just mentally checked out, Hyatt's the one that was specifically mentioned in this article, but obviously Burns referred to other guys, and a lot of us took that as him referring to Deonte Banks because it seemed like he checked out at times last year. Then I do think you can open a question mark about the head coach and Brian Daboll. And did he check out last season? Because at times I thought he looked defeated having to deal with the poor performances of the quarterbacks. This is a guy who threw a tablet down in front of Daniel Jones 2 seasons ago. So he's not without his flaws. And I think that at times he looked mentally checked out. So I just think it opens up a whole can of worms getting an article or an excerpt like this from Connor Hughes. And, I think that there's question marks about Daboll, but there's definitely more question marks about the locker room and especially, I think, the leadership within the organization.
With Deonte Banks, not only did he look like he mentally checked out, physically, you saw it. He admitted it on a play with Jalen Hurts, how he didn't want to hit him. He just kind of chased him out of bounds. Didn't want to hit him. And it was a terrible look. And again, these are reasons why the Giants have been really poor. Not only been out physical and just not played well, but when you have players kind of have that kind of attitude, to me, it is a poor reflection of the coach. Good on Brian Burns to not throw any player in particular under the bus, because that's really where you get a lot of turmoil and you get a lot of dissension in the locker room. So obviously professional with him just saying some of these guys got to grow up. Obviously Jalin Hyatt was one of them. Chris, what can Jalin Hyatt do to redeem himself with the coaching staff in the front office?
Yeah, as far as last year being in the doghouse and being mentally checked out, I'm not surprised, right? Like at the end of the day, the New York Giants won 3 games last year, however many they won.
3. Don't give us too much credit.
They were down to their 3rd string quarterback. So I'm not surprised that he and probably many others checked out. That's just the reality of the beast when it comes to the NFL, especially when you're not in a situation like the Carolina Panthers were last year, like we talked about several times, Bad Dog, down the stretch where they were building towards something. Bryce Young, the quarterback of the future, was playing well the last 4 or 5 weeks. Even though the team wasn't doing well, there was hope, that you were building towards something. Last year, the team was just a complete disaster. You were hoping to go into the year to be relatively competitive, and there was no player like Jackson Dart on the roster that you could be building towards something with. You knew that Daniel Jones was on the way out. So I'm not surprised that Jalin Hyatt and I'm sure several other Giants checked out. I'm not saying I advocate for that or that that's a good thing, but it doesn't surprise me at all. How did you get out of the doghouse? Like Anthony said, make plays. When you get on the field, get an opportunity, right? I remember when he got on the field last year and his route running was abysmal. in the game where he got a lot of reps. So make plays, play better. End of story. I don't know if it's the Doghouse or if the Giants just don't believe in him as much as we thought they did when they drafted him. They signed Darius Slayton. There's rumors that they were trying to get Gabe Davis. So how much do they really believe in the kid? We're going to find out, though, as the season gets going. But if he plays well with the new quarterback, if he gets an opportunity, he'll get out of the Doghouse real quick. You need playmakers.
Adriana, what do you think he can do to get himself on the field and get some reps when it actually counts? What does he have to do in this preseason to do that?
Well, I think from a coaching staff and a front office perspective, he needs to show them that he cares and he's willing to work hard. And to me, that looks like showing up in meetings. It looks like knowing the playbook, being the first one on the field, be the Daniel Jones, be the first one in and the last one out. You want to prove that you should deserve a shot. And, I'm sure we all heard by now that he caught a beautiful touchdown pass from Jackson Dart today. That is the stuff that you need to do. Show that you deserve a spot on this field. Just because the Giants traded up to draft you doesn't mean that you were guaranteed to be a starter. And I know he's really young. I just hope that he has learned at this point that you're not guaranteed anything just because you made an NFL roster. You have to fight for your spot. His team obviously is coming off a really awful year. And I feel like this is a perfect opportunity for him to say, okay, I've been humbled a little bit. I've learned that I got to put the work in, and it's up to me to prove that I deserve to be on this field. He needs to take a note out of Cam Scadaboo's book, who said, I haven't earned anything. I don't deserve anything. And I hope that at this point, that is what Jalin has learned. So I think there's a lot of us who are still rooting for him. We want to see him succeed. The coaching staff, I'm sure, also wants to see that, but it's up to him to prove it. So I would really like to see him get involved, to be humble. I hope that he's listening to the coaches and he's taking advice from someone like Darius Slayton, who's been on the team a long time. And, he's willing to improve. Because like I said, there are people, I'm one of them, who are really rooting for him. And it's, who doesn't want another good wide receiver on this team? I think it would only benefit everyone. So I just hope he's learned from that.
Yeah, because it's just something we don't have. Just a guy with straight on speed. I was a huge fan of Jalin Hyatt when they drafted him. I was wondering why he couldn't get on the field myself. To Chris's point, I get you're human. You constantly lose. You're going into games with Tim Boyle at quarterback. It is very easy to have a letdown, probably figuring we're not
flying over the stadium. The fans are booing you.
Right. It's easy to get in that mindset. I understand that. But again, you're a professional athlete and you need to act as a professional athlete all the time. To Adriana's point, Jalin Hyatt hadn't earned the right to take plays off or not work hard or whatever. Like, he hasn't earned the right. If you're a veteran, I'm not saying Dexter Lawrence took plays off, but if you're Dexter Lawrence and I know he got hurt, but if say it's week 16 and he's kind of going easy in practice and he ain't giving 110%, you can understand why. But when you're a rookie, for me, in a season like that, that's your time to shine. Like, I feel like that's a time you really need to prove yourself. Hey, look at what I can do. This is a perfect time for him to have an exhibition for himself and say, look what I can do. And like Chris mentioned, he was terrible in the games he played. He dropped passes, route running was bad. I still have hope for him. You don't win the Fred Biletnikoff Award for being the best wide receiver in college by accident. There is a ton of talent there. You hope that he comes in the better attitude. Like Adriana said, you hope that he got humbled a little bit and realized I have to work. And you hope a guy like Russell Wilson can get in his ear a little bit and say, hey, listen, kid, you got a lot of talent, man, but nobody's going to get to know that talent if you don't work hard. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't work hard at this level, nobody's going to know you have any talent. You got to earn your way out in the field.